Folks, sometimes it's better to wait and not just have a emotional reaction to things. And I didn't make any videos yesterday because I wanted to catch all of the talk shows. Then I wanted to decompress, think about everything that was said and done. Then I wanted to watch the Super Bowl, which obviously I was disappointed in. Atlanta had that game, and the quarterback went brain dead because all he had to do was not get his team out of field goal range, but the penalty, blah blah blah, but then the sack. And I blame part of that on the quarterback, but more importantly, the offensive coordinator's got to realize that all he needs is a field goal. So why not just call 3 running plays and tell everybody, every offensive lineman, everybody, do not jump. This is the snap count, and do not hold. They get a field goal and they win in regulation. But that being said, then I basically continued watching the morning shows. Then I slept on it and I thought about it and I said, I need to put these videos in some type of order. And I think one of the most important videos or news shows, which this wasn't a news show, was the interview that Donald Trump did with Bill O'Reilly on Fox. Now, you say most important. I say most important because, as we all know, Bill O'Reilly is not going to press Donald Trump about anything. If Donald Trump says something, Bill may come back with a jokingly inept follow-up. Trump will repeat whatever he said, and then Bill O'Reilly will move away from it. And if you don't believe me, just watch this particular interview and you will see it in action. But also, Bill O'Reilly will let the most inflammatory comments go. Now, the Republicans should have had their hair on fire regarding this interview. And for those of you who don't know it, this interview did not take place on Sunday. This interview took place on Friday, okay? Just like a lot of the interviews that Chuck Todd does. He does them on Friday. And that's why you saw such tremendous pushback and people Saturday and Sunday already having seen the interview, because all of these media outlets, they all share information. All of the media outlets were jumping up and down on this. And if this had been a Democratic president who made the comments about the Russians and comparing the Russians to America, if that had been a Democrat that made those comments, the Republicans would have had their hair on fire. Fox News would have done a 24-hour nonstop marathon, basically trashing the Democratic president that made that statement. But anyway, I digress, and I've gone 4 minutes into this. Let me play this interview and let me break it down for you.
Week for the Trump administration. Judge Gorsuch, that rollout went very smoothly, I think.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
But the refugee deal, not so much.
I think it was very smooth. He had 109 people out of hundreds of thousands of travelers, and all we did was vet those people very, very carefully.
Okay, that's the first piece. Why are they concentrating on 109 people? There were 200 plus people who had proper traveling documents who could not even get on planes. So they always want to concentrate on that 109 person small number, and even that number, they abused a lot of the people that came in who had green cards okay, which gave them legal status to come into the country and should not have been barred. But what about those other 200, I believe it was a number of approximately 270 people that the airlines had received guidance on that were not even allowed to get on a plane? So your number obviously is going to be a lot higher. It's going to be, I think it was 370 plus, 380 plus people that were absolutely affected as far as transportation was concerned. What about the 100,000 people who had their visas canceled? They don't want to bring that up. Okay, so if he said it was highly successful, no, it wasn't. And it wasn't successful because you didn't do it the right way. Number one, it was a travel ban. But that being said, number two, you didn't run it past all of the people and operations within the administration that you should have in order to make it bulletproof. You continue to think that you are not president, even though that's a title that has been given to you. You continue to think that you are king. And when you sign a decree, it is law, and that's the end of it. But that's not how our system works. And you readily found that out over the weekend. But you, for a fact, knew, because you're an avid TV watcher, about all the protests all across the country. So for you to say that the rollout was, a success, I mean, I don't know what window you're looking through, but it must be really opaque, and it must be a one-way window, and all you can see is your reflection instead of what's actually happening out there.
To do anything differently if you had to do it over again?
Look
I
at
mean,
life
some of your
with
people
things.
didn't really know what the order was.
Well, that's not what General Kelly said. General Kelly, who's now Secretary Kelly, he said he totally knew, he was aware of it, and it was very smooth. It was a...
You see, and that's the other problem. General Kelly may have fallen into line, and I think this is a one-shot deal. I think he gave you your one mistake with him, but he might have known. But obviously the people, i.e. the agents that are in charge of enforcing the policy, they damn sure didn't know. And if everything was so smooth, why did General Kelly the next day have to issue a letter of guidance? It's because it wasn't done properly, and everybody who needed to know didn't know.
109 people.
Let's talk about Iran. Your assessment, do you think we're on a collision course, we being the United States, with that country?
I think it was the worst deal I've ever seen negotiated. I think it was a deal that should have never been
nuke deal you're
negotiated.
talking about.
Absolutely, the deal that was made by the Obama administration. I think it's a shame that we've had a deal like that and that we had to sign a deal like that, and there was no reason to do it. And if you're going to do it, have a good deal.
Okay. First of all, everything that Obama did was always the worst in history, and no Republican and Donald Trump would have never done it. That's number one. Everything was the worst. And I said it again, this guy has, he's got mental issues. And I believe that because anytime someone talks in the third person regarding themselves, regarding when a person talks in superlatives only, either positive or negative. So everything's either the best or the worst. There's no middle ground, no mitigating factors in any subject that they talk about. Basically seeing the world in black and white, and your side's the quote-unquote white side, no pun intended, and the other side is the black side. You got issues, because as we all know, the world is not just on one side or the other, but there's a spectrum of differences and similarities in between those two polar opposites. So what this guy is consistently, I have yet to see him say hardly anything positive. And if he does say something positive, he glosses across it and then jumps into self-aggrandizement of himself. But he made a statement. He didn't see what we got out of the Iran nuclear deal. Well, obviously, what we got out of it was not having to go to war and not having nuclear weapons generated by Iran. Okay? That's what we got out of it. Now, you may say it was just a temporary reprieve, or you may say, hey, this is great and they aren't going to get them anything ever, which is actually what the agreement calls for. But that being said, that deal was signed more than a year ago, so we have gone more than a year without having to get into another altercation with another country in the Middle East, and I call that a good thing. Now, can it be tightened up? Yeah, probably. You know, I'm not really privy to all of the rules and requirements of the agreement, but, you know, pretty much any agreement can be tightened up. But for these people to call it an absolute failure, that's a bunch of crap. Even the Israeli military, which is not publicized, even they have stated that the deal was a good deal. But the political people, the leaders of the countries, they're constantly railing against it. And Netanyahu, racist asshole that he is, his Likud party, if you ever have time, look up the history of the Likud party. And you'll be surprised at how similar they are to the Palestinian people and what the Palestinian, I call them Palestinian radicals, are doing. The Likud party was born actually out of a violent fringe of a different party. And the Likud party, these guys were basically terrorists in their own right. But that's just me talking. You go do your own research and look it up. Anyway, let me get back to Donald Trump.
Them $1.7 billion in cash, which is unheard of.
And they keep talking about this $1.7 billion in cash like we paid a ransom. Yes, the country got back $1.7 billion, okay, and they got it back in cash. Number one, it was their money. So giving somebody back their money is not paying a ransom. Paying a ransom is taking money out of your pocket and paying it to someone else. So they actually, a ransom was not paid. They got back their money. And number two, they had to get it in cash because of the sanctions that we had in place. So we could not transfer funds electronically, which is the norm of doing business around the world. Since we had cut them out of the systems, the only way to pay them was in cash. So just let's just keep the record straight.
And we put the money up, and we have really nothing to show for it.
Possible you tear it up?
We'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to see what
It's
happens.
possible.
I can say this: they have total disregard for our country. They are the #1 terrorist state. They're sending money all over the place and weapons, and can't do that.
Sanctions, that's how you're going to start with them,
Just started.
but you're moving a carrier, right?
I never talk about military moves. I always criticize President Obama when they have an announcement that they're going into Mosul or they're going to someplace and they give the name, the date, the time. I don't believe in that.
So you're not real bullish on Iran at this point?
No, I'm not bullish. I think they have total disrespect for our country. And I understand that deal, I would have lived with it if they said, okay, we're all together now. But it was just the opposite. It's like they're emboldened. Where they follow our planes, they circle our ships with their little boats, and they lost respect because they can't believe anybody could be so stupid as to make a deal like that.
You talked to Putin last week. You had a busy week last
I'm
week.
pretty busy. Busy week and a half.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you?
but-
Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. And if Russia helps us in the fight against ISIS, which is a major fight, and Islamic terrorism all over the world,
right,
major fight, that's a good thing. Will I get along with them? I have no idea. It's
he's
very
a
possible
killer,
I
though.
won't.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. What, you think our country's so innocent?
And that's the statement that should have set Bill O'Reilly's hair on fire, okay? But it didn't. He basically downplayed it. He did, as you'll see, point out a couple of things, but if that had been a Democrat sitting in that seat, he would have went crazy. Anyway, let me finish it up.
Do you think our country's so innocent?
I don't know of any government leaders that are killers anymore.
Well, take a look at what we've done too. We've made a lot of mistakes. I've been against the war in Iraq from the
Yeah,
beginning.
mistakes are.
That was a lie. He was not against the war in Iraq from the beginning, and that's also been documented.
Mistakes, okay, but a lot of people were killed. So a lot of
All right.
killers around, believe me.
Let's talk about Mexico. There was a report you talked to President.
See, he let him get away with that one. He should have been up his ass, okay, as far as making that comment comparing America to Russia, okay? And then if Putin is the person that is directly responsible, which he is, for the deaths of so many people, who on this side is he trying to compare Putin to, unless, I guess, he's possibly trying to compare him to himself. Thank God he hasn't gotten really anybody killed, but he damn sure has advocated for certain people to be killed. I refer you back to the Central Park Five.
Nieto, and you told him, this was the report, I want to know if this is true or not, that if his army couldn't handle the drug cartels, that U.S. Army soldiers would. Did you say that?
We have to do something about the cartels. I did talk to him about it. I want to help him with it. I think he's a very good man. We have a very good relationship, as you probably know. He seemed very willing to get help from us because he has got a problem.
Got a problem.
And it's a real problem for us. Don't forget, those cartels are operating in our country, and they're poisoning the youth of our country.
At this point,
Okay, he didn't answer the question, so I guess in a way he did. I guess he confirmed that he threatened to invade Mexico with U.S. troops, which, for those of you who don't know it, is an act of war. Okay, it's an act of war. And there is no president of any country that's going to invite any other country to come in to their country, especially if the country is pretty much stable, which Mexico is, with foreign troops. So Mr. Trump just lied through his teeth about having such a great conversation with the president of Mexico and what the actual substance was. So I guess he did confirm that he threatened the president of Mexico with invasion by U.S. forces. This interview that O'Reilly's doing, this has so much stuff in it that people are gonna or have gone crazy over. It's like mind-boggling.
do you consider Mexico a corrupt country? Because this stuff has been going on for decades.
I love the people. I really like this administration. I think he's a good man. We get along very well. But they have problems controlling aspects of their country. There's no question about it. And I would say the drugs and the drug cartels, number one.
Have you figured out what kind of a tariff you're going to levy on Mexico to pay for the wall?
Well, right now, it's very unfavorable. Right now, we're losing our jobs to Mexico. You look at the plants, you look at these massive plants. Now, I have to tell you, I've turned it around already. I've turned it around. You see that. Ford has been phenomenal. They canceled the plant. They're building tremendous...
Yeah, you intimidated them.
No,
they're afraid
General
of you.
Motors has been Mary Barra.
They're afraid of you. You know these
I don't know if they're
companies.
afraid. No, they want to do...
Let me stop real quick. Number one, I honestly believe that the changes that Ford was making, he did have something to do with it, and the something that he had to do with it was focusing attention on it. But and I believe that Ford saw all the attention being focused on it and did change direction, as with GM and these other companies. So I'll give him his due. I believe because of the attention he's focused on these large companies, that they did decide to make changes. But obviously the cost analysis and figured out that they would make more money by keeping the jobs here, even though the production costs were going to be higher than they would have made by shifting those particular plants down to Mexico, having lower production costs, but at the same time having a negative consumer feedback. That's one. And number two, the possibility of a tariff being placed on their products. Now, I'm saying the possibility and not the probability, because if they tear up NAFTA, then they got to renegotiate all the trade agreements, and all hell could have broken loose as far as those types of trade negotiations are concerned.
What's right? They're going
They
to
want
bring
to
jobs
do what's
back.
right. Why didn't they do what was right in the past? They're afraid
Because
of
the
you.
wrong people spoke to them. But they're going to do what's right, and they're bringing jobs back to Michigan and Ohio
All right.
and Pennsylvania and all the places that have lost their jobs. So that's already happening. I think you're going to see a tremendous job growth in this country.
Let's turn to domestic policy. I just spent the week in California. As you know, they are now voting on whether they should become a sanctuary state. So California and the USA are on a collision course. How do you see it?
Well, I think it's ridiculous, sanctuary cities. As you know, I'm very much opposed to sanctuary cities. They breed crime. There's a lot of problems. If we have to, we'll defund. We give tremendous amounts of money to California.
So you're gonna defund-
California in many ways is out of control, as you know. Obviously, the voters agree. Otherwise, they wouldn't have voted for me.
So
The voters agree that California basically should become a sanctuary state. That's what the voters agree on. And the voters in the cities, and I did a video on all the cities in California that have sanctuary city status. But you talk about crime. There's not a giant crime problem in California. So you basically are trying to make people think that there is when there really isn't. I mean, Los Angeles, there was a big gang problem, blah, 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 blah. But that had nothing to do, well, it didn't have a lot to do. It did have something to do with illegal residents coming in. But the majority, I will say, really didn't have to do with illegals. I'll just say illegals. Now, the crime situation in California, and I'm speaking specifically of Los Angeles, it's way down. Are there still, some random shootings here and there? Yes, there are. But as far as the overall crime statistics for Los Angeles, way down. And Los Angeles obviously is a big time sanctuary city. Now, Mr. Trump, you really need to know how things work. You cannot defund sanctuary cities. It's against the law. When federal funds are appropriated and directed to particular programs, or particular uses, it has to be designated, okay? So now if you are saying, I am going to defund, let's say the Los Angeles Police Department, the money that goes to them, the only way that you are legally able to defund them is if written into the financing vehicle is a requirement that the city of Los Angeles not be a sanctuary city. If that is not written into the financing vehicle, you cannot stop the financing. That is a straight up loss when the city of Los Angeles turns around and sues you. And that's just a matter of law, period.
funding is your weapon of choice.
Well, it's a weapon. I don't want to defund the
But
state
you're willing
or the
to do
city. I don't want to defund anybody. I want to give them the money they need to properly operate as a city or a state. If they're going to have sanctuary cities, we may have to do that. Certainly that would be a weapon.
Is there any validity to the criticism of you
Now, let me say this, okay? And I'm going to give you this example early. If Donald Trump made a statement, well, he tweeted actually, that the federal judge that issued the ban, he tweeted out that this guy was a so-called judge, which Donald Trump, anytime there's a judge that goes against him, he always has to disparage the judge. But he went on further to state that if anything happens, that it would be the judge's fault. Okay. And you can find those references for yourself, okay? He took down a portion of that tweet that stated that it was a so-called judge, but he, I believe, left up the outrageous, and actually he did take out the outrageous portion. But he did say that if anything happens, you need to look at the judge because it'll be the judge's fault. Okay. When he talks about defunding sanctuary cities, and let's say he got his way, well, the city of New York, which I think most of us agree would be and is a top target for terrorism. They already got hit with the Twin Towers being destroyed. The Twin Towers is targeted at least twice previously, and various other things, Times Square, whatever. Okay. If he defunds the city of New York, do you know what two of the top 10 things that federal dollars are used for in the city of New York? Two of the top 10 things are for New York Police Department. They get a bunch of money from the Fed. And in particular, they have a special operation that is funded almost completely by the Fed, okay? And it's their counter or anti-terrorism unit. So if Mr. Trump gets his way, okay, and New York City doesn't back down, and for whatever reason they defund, stop sending federal funds into New York, they immediately would have to reduce the amount of police that New York City has, and they would have to shut down their anti-terrorist unit. So then, if something happens, whose fault would it be? Just something to think about.
That you say things you can't back up factually, and as the president, if you say, for example, that there are 3 million illegal aliens who voted, and then you don't have the data to back it up, some people are going to say that's irresponsible for a president to say that. Is there any validity to that?
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
I know, but you got to have data to back it up.
Let me just tell you, and it doesn't have to do with the vote, although that's the end result. It has to do with the registration. And when you look at the registration and you see dead people that have voted,
Okay, see, he just lied. Okay. Number one, many people, he always throws that many people out there, just like many people have come to him and told him that Obama was born in Kenya some damn where. That's his many people routine. Now, when he tied voter registration to actual voting, as far as fraud is concerned, you can't do that. Okay. There are there are millions of people, and I do say millions of people, who are registered to vote in more than one place. Okay. I guess for the first 2 years that I lived in Texas, I was probably registered in 2 places, obviously California and Texas. Now, there is no legal requirement to deregister when you move. So it is actually legal to be registered in more than one place. Where the fraud would come in at would be if you voted twice, okay? You voted in your current place of residence and in your former place of residence. That would be illegal, okay? And that is not what's being done. So he's trying to conflate two different things. His own daughter is registered in two places. Steve Bannon is registered in two places. There are several people within his campaign that we discovered are registered in two places. That does not make them criminals, it just makes them registered in two places. Now, if you catch any of them voting in two places, that's a whole different ballgame, and that, in fact, would be fraud. But there is no evidence of that occurring. So for him to try to conflate the fact that dead people are still on the registration rolls, there is nothing unusual about that, unless you create a law that says at the point of death, the coroner must notify the registrar, the voter registrar, of the death of the person, so that the registrar can automatically remove that person from the rolls. Anything short of that, or making a law where a family member is required to notify the registrar, anything short of that, and you're going to have people who have died remaining on the voter rolls for up to 2 years because they should not, obviously could not have voted, and they will automatically fall off after, I believe it's 2 years.
See people that are registered in two states and that voted in two states. When you see other things, when you see...
He has no proof of people voting in two states. See, that's the bullshit that he's going to throw out there, and he's got no evidence of that.
Illegals, people that are not citizens, and they're on the registration rolls. Look,
he's got no evidence of that either.
we can be babies, but you take a look at the registration. You have illegals, you have dead people, you have this. It's really a bad situation. It's really bad. And
so you think you're going to be proven correct in that statement?
well, I think I already have. A lot of people have come out and said that I am correct.
But did that...
See, okay, and Mitch McConnell has already said that they are not going to provide any funding for this bullshit witch hunt for 3 to 5 million people, not even people, illegal residents voting in the election. Everybody knows that's bullshit, and even and fortunately, Mitch McConnell is not going to throw money down a goddamn gopher hole just to satisfy this guy's ego.
It has to show that 3 million illegals voted.
Forget that. Forget all of that. Just take a look at the registration, and we're going to do it. And I'm going to set up a commission.
See, just taking a look at the registration doesn't prove your point. Being registered, you could be registered in 52 goddamn states. As long as you don't vote, that's not a violation. So he's now trying to equate voter fraud with registration. It's just not true.
To be headed by Vice President Mike Pence, and we're going to look at it very, very carefully.
Well, that's good. Let's get to the bottom of this. 2017, can Americans expect a tax cut?
I think so, yes, and I think before the end of the year, I would like to say yes.
Okay. Can Americans in 2017 expect a new health care plan rolled out by the Trump administration?
More than likely not.
Year.
In the process, and maybe it'll take till sometime into next year, but we are certainly going to be in the process. Very complicated. Obamacare is a disaster. You have to remember.
Yeah, you have to remember that he said he was going to sign a repeal on his first day in office. And we're going on 3 weeks in, and there has been no absolute repeal signed by him. Now, obviously, he can't repeal Obamacare by executive order, but the Republicans, his buddies, were supposed to, and obviously they have the ability to do it. They could write up a repeal order, pass a repeal order in the House and the Senate, get it on his desk for his signature. They could have gotten that done within let's call it, let's give him over the weekend. 3 days, but it hasn't been done. Come on.
Obamacare doesn't work. So
Obamacare absolutely works. The problem is somewhat now with the premium increase. But what they also don't tell you is the premiums did go up, but the subsidies went up even more than the premiums went up in order to cover the increase in the premiums for the most part. But they won't mention that one.
we are putting in a wonderful plan. It's statutorily takes a while to get. We're going to be putting it in fairly soon.
Didn't he just say that the plan that they're going to put in it may take into 2018? So I'm confused. What's the difference between fairly soon, or what's the definition of fairly soon and next year? Somebody explain that one to me. This guy has no plan, by the way. They really don't. Now, you could talk about Price having a plan, but the majority of the Republicans do not even want to get behind his bullshit plan. And that is basically privatization and letting the market do whatever the hell it wants to do. But I digress. Here we go.
I think that, yes, I would like to say by the end of the year, at least the rudiments, but we should have something within the year and the following year.
All right, last question.
Now, he says he has a plan, and now he just says we should have something by the end of the year or into next year. Either if you got a plan, you got a plan, and if you don't, you don't. But there's no middle ground on that one.
You get 4 hours of sleep or some crazy thing like that. When your head hits the pillow, do you ever say to yourself, I can't believe I'm here?
And I don't want to, this is a bunch of crap. I don't even want to go through this. Hang on a second. I'm going to skip past this. He's so honored to be walking into the White House bullshit. All right, so that was basically the end of the interview. Okay, again, there is so much stuff in there that just screams at the ridiculousness of this man, and the fact that he really, in my opinion, doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and he needs a good civics class. But more than he, I believe, it's the people that are pulling the strings behind him. And the more I think about it, the more I think that there are multiple puppet masters sitting in behind Donald Trump. I think Putin is one of them, and I think Steve Bannon is another. And there may be even more, but for sure, it's got to be those two, because everything that this man has rolled out, as far as Muslim bans, etc., that's right up Steve Bannon's, that's right up his alley, okay? The fact that a lot of the speeches that are considered, in my opinion, divisional speeches, particularly his inauguration speech, that was written by an affirmed white supremacist, Steve Miller, okay? The rhetoric that comes out of his mouth, okay, when he's reading the teleprompters, that's Bannon and Miller, no ifs, ands, or buts. So I think for sure that they're pulling strings, and then his refusal to criticize Vladimir Putin, who is another documented murderer, fascist, egomaniac, etc. That just tells me that Russia or Vladimir or the intelligence agencies over in Russia, that they got something on this guy, because I mean he has gone so far as criticizing America before and without criticizing Russia. So, and that to me is a no-no. And for Republicans, like I said, their hair should be on fire from the comments that this guy made.